Hello and welcome to Beyond Top 10 Tennis. My name is Dr. Ashley Berge and I'm your host. If you're not familiar with my work or would like to learn more about it, head on over to AM8 International, the first tennis lab of its kind worldwide that is centered on delivering top 10 rankings and is 100% backed by science. This season, we're backing on something new, something fresh, what I've been holding back. Changeover segments will deliver how to beat the best players in the world and or how the best players in the world are winning with top 10 to Grand Slam differences. If you want more, that's where my 14 books come into play. So be sure to dive into them and become familiar with AM International and now 190 plus today. It's a new frontier. I'm no longer holding back. So as always, buckle in and enjoy the ride. Welcome to another edition of Beyond Top 10 Tennis. For those of you who have been with us for some time now, thank you so much. We would not be here without you. For new listeners, welcome. As always, you'll see those books in the background. Either side of me now, we've had, there we go, a little bit of a change up. So again, if you've been with us for some time, you know that you'll notice a bit of a shift. You also know this season we have transitioned to those live segments. So you may hear occasionally some barks, some whoops in the background. We'll see if they do last. If they last a little bit too long, then we may have to obviously edit that out. But we're going to keep things, I'll say, a little bit rough around the edges this season, see how that goes. Please share your feedback with me as well. I'm very curious to learn, I guess, what you guys are thinking. If you would like, I think, additional insights, et cetera, et cetera. So we will go through there. But please look at, I guess, those first, say, 80 to 90 episodes, different format. Then the next 100, roughly, different format. And this season, we're going to try and mix things up a little bit. Not too much, but obviously the changeover segments. We'll see, time permitting today, if we do squeeze those ones in or if I hold them off for later in the week or next week. See how we go, because I do have probably, I think we've got about almost a dozen actually since our last episode that I did want to go over. But again, we do have I'll say a bit to catch up on this week. We've had a week since the Australian Open, so we're going to get right into it. Here, Australian Open, but also over there, our screens are looking at Montpellier, Dallas, Rotterdam, Buenos Aires on the ATP Tour this week and or last week. Ostrava, Transylvania, Abu Dhabi and Qatar getting underway, well, today for WTA Tour. ATP Tour, their primary events actually I'll say underway later today. Qatar did start on WTA Tour yesterday. So a little bit of an overlap there, but I want to have a look at or wrap things up for the Australian Open. You know, if you've been following along, the scribbles that we've got down, not really where I like them to be, but we'll get to that shortly. I want to have a look at the 2025 Australian Open results around the 16 onwards. So you can have a look at I'll say the bigger points and who's dropped off before we obviously have a look at the rankings. I'm focusing on last week's rankings. The rankings or updated rankings for ATP Tour will come out later today because we are in Australia, for those who are not familiar. WTA Tour have updated that, but I want to keep it obviously in sync. I'm not too sure why there's a bit of a lag on the ATP Tour side. Different time zones, I suppose, but they do have those updates. So that's where we're starting off today. We'll go over all the events, time permitting, then the changeover segments. All right, so let's have a look at the data. Now, keep in mind, I am looking at you, but also looking at a different screen, a little bit of a different setup. But again, feedback, share that, see how we go. All right, Australian Open, predominantly the results are in front of me. So we did have a look at quarterfinals on both sides, 100%, the ones that did obviously progress. Pretty happy with that. Not so much when we're looking at who got through. Keep in mind, it's really, we got 3 out of 4, not 4 out of 4, 3 out of 4. That's why the percentage points drops. Instead of 100%, we're looking at 75%. That's okay. So both sides, 75% we got through really quickly. Sabalenka over Jovic as anticipated. Svitolina over Gauff. I thought that was really exciting. What this suggests, yes, Svitolina back inside the top 10. We'll get to that when we look at the rankings. But Gorf actually trailed off. But she's not the only one. Pegula over Anisimova, I think that was pretty tight, but I did share that we did think that Pegula was going to get through, remember? Rybakina, Swiatek, we did have Swiatek, and that's the only one that didn't get through because we had Svitolina, Sabalenka respectively as well. This one, though, look, neck and neck first round, but I thought what was really interesting, the Rybakina, Swiatek match, it was very intense first set, but the pattern that we're seeing with Swiatek, unfortunately, we see that dip, and it's not just in those matches. Arguably, if Swiatek got that first set, we could have seen the second set like that, and maybe she'd pick up in the third, but that's another aspect. I've been really focused on that. I would say the last 6 months I've been noticing those patterns. Not that many players have those patterns, but when you notice a pattern with the best players in the world, well, for me, I take note, and that is a player or one of the best players in the world, as far as the females are concerned. She is the only active player with the most Grand Slams to her name that has had those dips. Obviously, Venus is active, more Grand Slams, so I'm transparent there. But we're seeing those dips at the top. And I'm very curious to see how Swiatek picks up this week. If this season that pattern persists, it's not necessarily bad. We obviously see some really great results, then those occasional dips. Interestingly, we actually do see that on the men's side, but not the dips through play. And so that's what I think is quite interesting. So I'll keep tabs on that. And we'll have those rolling updates as the season obviously progresses to see if those patterns persist or if it's if there's a correction there. All right, so that's where the 75% did come from. But we did say initially that if Rybakina did get the win over Swiatek, we did flag her to obviously progress all the way through with Sabalenka. So semi-final, Sabalenka over Svitolina, 2 and 3. I don't think Svitolina did play her best tennis, but Sabalenka, she was another level. Rybakina, Pegula, similar story, almost came back, I'll say, in that second, 9-7 in that tiebreak, 6-3, 7-6. That was a pretty exciting match to watch. I really enjoyed this, especially like all of these matches. The finals, though, has to be one of the best women's finals I've seen in some time now. It wasn't a whitewash. I love it when it's not a whitewash. I love it when the two best players get to the final and they really fight it out at that same level. I think we saw that predominantly in the quarters, semis, finals, when you're really not seeing just one-sided, and that final was really good. And Sabalenka still, yes, deserves to be at the top. Rybakina, she deserves to be top 3 where she is now. We saw that WTA finals last season, what was happening, and the predictive analytics that I shared, that Rybakina, she really is top 3 now. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see Gorf, if she re-enters, Pegula, Anisimova as well, and Swiatek maintaining her hold there, or if there's a bit of a shuffle, and there really could be a bit of a shuffle in the next few weeks. That is going to be very, very interesting. But we will get to that later. We'll see how we go. All right, I want to wrap the Australian Open up to start with, and then we will look at last week's, this week's, or what's in action. So have a look at this. Let's go back to the round of 16, right? So round of 16 at the Australian Open and who got through. Let's list the names. Sabalenka, Mboko, Putintseva, Jovic, Gorf, Makova, Svitolina, Ondreva, Pegula, Keys, Wang, Anisimova, Rybakina, Mertens, English, Swiatek. So a number of surprise packets there. All right, so bear with me. Last year, so this time last year, looking at these names, Badosa, Danilovic, Gorf, yes, Benchik, Sabalenka, Ondreva, Pavlyuchenkova, Vekic, Lies, Swiatek, Rybakina, Keys, Navarro, Kasatkina, Kudermetova, Svitolina. Look at the number of players that did not make that through. All right, so let's count. All right, Badosa, no. Danilovic, no. Vekic, no. Pavlyuchenkova, no. Gorf, yes. Benchik, no. Sabalenka, yes. Ondreva, I'm just going to check. Andreeva did get through. So that's only actually 2. I'm just checking as well. Yeah, all right. So Gauff is there. Sabalenka and Andreeva are there. All right. So only 3 out. And then, okay, like Swiatek, yes. Navarro, no. Kazatkina, no. Rybakina, yes. Now I believe, and Keys, yes, which makes it 6. And Svitolina makes it 7. So 7. Kudermetova, no, didn't play. So 7. So less than 50%. 7 players from this time last season maintained that level of play. And what I like is that of those 7, Svitolina's back into the top 10, Swiatek's top 10, Rybakina top 10, Keys top 10, Gauff top 10, Sabalenka, Andreeva top 10. And that is, I love that. That is why round of 16 really is a very big ballpark when you're looking at top 10, matins, etc. Those books in the background note on the note, that side. Shows you the chart work, the statistics, all of that behind that, longitudinal analyses, etc., etc. Also on AM8 International, the data's there as well. So I find that very fascinating to look at that. And then progress through to the quarters. Just double checking. Yeah, all right. So quarters, you've got Sabalenka, Pavlyuchenkova. So Sabalenka, obviously, Badosa, Gauff. So, okay, Gauff, but Badosa did track through. Navarro, Swiatek track through. Keys, Svitolina. So both of them are there. That's 5 out of 8 top 10 last season. Progressing through to the semis, Keys, Swiatek, Sabalenka, Badosa. So 3 out of those 4 are still inside the top 10 up until, I'll say, midway last or late last season, Badosa was. So those players actually maintained their hold inside the top 10. Obviously, we know it was Keys, Sabalenka final last year. So we will see a number of players drop a significant number of points because of that. All right. That is the WTA Tour side. So let's have a look at the men's side and what happens. It's similar, 75%. Obviously, remember my bias towards de Minaur. Alcaraz obviously did get through. So if I wasn't biased, there would have been 100%. So we'll say 75%. Alcaraz obviously did get through. We did have Sinner to get through, but that's a different, obviously, Djokovic just too good. And that was really impressive. Let's focus on the results here because Alcaraz over de Minaur, Zverev over Teen, but I tell you what, Teen with those 2 tiebreaks was actually really impressive. I'm thinking Teen's after, and I haven't looked at the rankings, has broken into the top 20 after this. Absolutely, I think he would have. Djokovic, Mazzetti, really heartbreaking for Mazzetti there. Obviously, he was up 2 sets to love, Djokovic up a break, and then bam. Sinner, Shelton, really thought maybe Shelton would have brought it, but I think you could really see the differences in the level. Despite how well Shelton was playing, Sinner was at that other level. When we're looking at the semis, Alcaraz, Zverev, this was really exciting, this match was, obviously for how long it was, but without overstating the obvious, obviously being very respectful to both players, the level of tennis, etc. I actually don't think Alcaraz played his best tennis. Credit to Zverev maybe for not letting him play his best tennis. But obviously you saw though the dips for Alcaraz with the cramps, etc. And Zverev not being able to take that advantage. If Zverev stepped up his game, he actually could have closed out the match. And I think that was a very big missed opportunity. We've seen that previously, though, unfortunately. Djokovic, Sinner, another 5-setter. Love that it was a 5-setter. And I think Sinner just did not step up. And I really think it has to do with, ironically, something to do with Sinner's conditioning. Because arguably you have to say, with the age variance there, that Sinner is physically fitter than Djokovic. With all metrics. But for Djokovic to make the final after a 5-setter is one, phenomenal from the physical fitness level. Obviously, he's been very selective in his tournaments that he's been playing, understandably so. But something was just not quite right in Sinner's camp, I will say, from that perspective. So I thought both players actually lagged, ironically, Alcaraz and Sinner, and the most experienced with Djokovic really did push through. And Zverev, you need to say he's more experienced, obviously on tour, longer than Sinner and Alcaraz respectively, that I'm going to say there was a bit of choking involved there. Whether that's correct or not, it appeared that he just wasn't able to step up when he needed to. And I think that really could have been a really big opportunity for Zverev. Look, as far as the final's concerned, history either way. That first set, then Alcaraz obviously closing it out. But again, I don't think it's not the best I've seen him play. The best I see him play is when he's against Sinner. And Sinner's best actually is more consistent, I will say, against players. And we've heard Alcaraz, I think, say that previously, that his best level comes out against Sinner. But I was just surprised from that perspective. And look, obviously, there's a bit of data that underscores that, etc., looking at the metrics, the outcomes, etc., etc. All right, so let's go back to the fourth round, so round of 16. And I want to go back now on the men's side to the round of 16. Just checking. All right, so round of 16 last year, Djokovic, Lehecka, Humbert, Zverev, Draper, Alcaraz, Paul, Dadovic, Rybakina, Michelson, de Minaur, Montpellier, Shelton, Sinner, Sonego, 10. All right, so you've got 8. I believe there's 8 there. Alcaraz, Paul, Bublik, de Minaur, Zverev, Cerundolo, Medvedev, 10, Mazzetti, Fritz, Menzik, Djokovic, Shelton, Rudd, Darderi, Sinner. All right, Sinner, 8. So one more than the women's side. Hopefully I've counted that correctly. Good. That level of maintenance is good. However, keep in mind, obviously 10 was not top 10, but he did. That was his breakthrough last year came. And what's really interesting is that the season before that was Paolini's breakthrough, obviously WTA Tour side, her round of 16 berth. And obviously what happened was those 2 finalist results. Different last season, Asamova already was tracking. It didn't really start with that, but that's a different discussion. Okay, so then we're looking at men's side, the quarterfinals. Djokovic, Alcaraz, Paul, Zverev. Sinner, de Minaur, Shelton, Sonego. This is really good because we look at the quarters now, and we had Alcaraz. Hold on, going back here. All right, we had Alcaraz, Djokovic, Zverev, and Sinner, de Minaur, and Shelton. That's 6. Now, I think on the women's side, I think I said 5. You tell me, yes or no. So that's a good metric there. Sonego is obviously going to drop points. Semis last season, Sinner, Shelton, Djokovic, Zverev. Obviously, Shelton got to the quarters, but Sinner, semis, Djokovic, semis, Zverev, semis. So Shelton was the one that didn't make the semis. And obviously in his place is Alcaraz. Alcaraz would have fallen early. I think that was 3rd round last season, unless I just did mention. No, yeah, it was the round of 16. So that's really interesting. Quarters against Djokovic in 4. There we go. A lot of data that we're flicking through. All right, so then we know obviously the finals. We just did the semis, and that's right. So remember, Djokovic Zverev walkover over Djokovic semifinals last season. Sinner over Zverev. So Zverev would have docked points. Djokovic, though, has gained points because he obviously made the semis and made the finals this season. Oh, my goodness. All right, so that is a lot of data. All right, putting that down, closing that tab. Australian Open is wrapped. Rybakina, Alcaraz as our champions. Deservedly so. The level of tennis was impressive, I think, on both sides. All right, so let's have a look without having a deep dive. We can say 100% on the women's side with who got to the finals. Men's side 50% because Sinner did fall in the semis, in all fairness. Or we can say 50-50 if we're excluding the Rybakina change. Data was a lot better promising prior to that. All right, WTA Tour first, then ATP Tour. Let's have a look what's been going on in the past week. I'm going to go through this really or pretty quickly, but I like this. All right, Ostrava. We've got a 250 here. Maria was the number 1 seed. Look, Uchijama, Gulbik, 5th seed. You've got Parry, Blinkova, and Arango, 2nd seed. So predominantly players outside, top 30, top 50. Semi-finals. I'm just going to focus on semi-finals here. You got Volnets and Bulta. Bulta, it has to be 12 months ago, maybe 18 months ago. I'll stay with 12 months ago. She was top 30. Bulta was top 30, predominantly consistently in the top 50. Didn't defend her points last season when she won, I think, 1 or 2 titles, but at least there was 1 big title in there. Ranking slipped right back just before the Australian Open, I think, or beginning of this season, outside the top 100. But she was top 30. She got into, I think, around 25 the season before. So we know what Katie's capable of. So Katie over Volnets 1 and 3. Parry, Kopach over Parry 4 and 4. Bulta Kopach. Bulta with the win in 3. I love this for Katie. Got a title. So her rankings will show her back inside the top 100. I hope that does her confidence some good because we know she has a really good game. Great to see her back there. Looking forward to seeing if Katie can, well, let's see if she can cause a bit of damage this season like she did the one before. All right, Transylvania Open. This is another 250 underway. Seeds-wise, Rybakina was the number 1 seed, Dalinovich 7th seed, Wang 4th seed. Remember coming off, obviously, Australian Open. Potapova, 5th seed, I believe she did win last year. Pliskova, Sestaya, 3rd seed. And Christian, 2nd seed. I'm going to fast forward all the way to the semi-finals. Maybe not so. I'm going to stop at the quarters here because Wang from Australian Open fell. Potapova fell. Yuan fell. So Snyder got through. Sestaya, Olinkova, and Raducanu, my apologies. All right, so as anticipated, we've got the 1st seed, 3rd seed getting through. Raducanu over Olinkova in 3. That's interesting. Sestaya over Snyder, interesting as well. Well done to Ukrainian tennis. 2 players through to the semi-finals. Very cool. So finals, Raducanu, Sestaya. Raducanu would have been favoured, but remember how well Sestaya played against Osaka. I think they had that tight match there. Osaka obviously winning the Australian Open. But Sestaya, home soil, 6-love, 6-2. I think that scoreline says a lot. Well done, Sestaya. I think this is her last season potentially on tour as well. Only heard I'll say a little bit about that. But that's a very good win. Raducanu, though, look, both are going to notch up those points. Let's see if Raducanu has a bit of that momentum in Qatar. And Sestaya potentially. All right. This one was in Abu Dhabi. I'll do my best to pronounce it. Montpellier. So Abu Dhabi, it's a 500 event. So it was the biggest event on last week. But we did have a late withdrawal at the top, whereas Zarazu was at the top. So I'm thinking maybe Rybakina or Sabalenka were going to play and then they pulled out. I'm not sure. But Alexandrova is the 2nd seed for perspective. But still a lot of big names. So we'll have a bit more of a deep dive. So round of 32, Cartel over Buska, Berge over Kruger. Now, Berge over Kruger, we haven't seen Berge tracking. And I know the results, maybe you know as well, but this is new. So it is something to keep an eye on. Ostapenko over Sekamativa. Good for Ostapenko because she would have dropped a number of points at the Australian Open. Torsten with the bye. Walton over Kazakina. Kazakina's having a bit of a bad run. So that's in 3. Her, top 10 finished not last year, the season before, top 10. Was still within reach of the top 10 last season. But we've had a bit of a swift regression. Kessler over Pavlyuchenkova. Pavlyuchenkova's rankings have dropped as well, unfortunately, after obviously her Australian results from 2025. Fernandez over Paquet, straight sets. Samsonova over Kennan, straight sets. Tajin over Joint. That's a surprising one. Tajin's up-and-comer. Joint goes on a career high. Baptiste over Kostanovic. Navarro with a bye. Sasnovich over Badosa. That's a little bit brutal there, especially because we know Badosa's had that rankings regression. That's a tough one, but we're hoping Badosa has a healthy season. Ayala over Sonmez. Now, remember Sonmez's performance at the Australian Open as well. So she is actually one to watch, I think, this season. Ayala, we know from last season, up-and-comer, and she has been able to maintain that momentum. Yastremska over Haddad Magia, good win. I would have said that was 50-50. So that's first round. Round of 16. All right, so Cartel over Zarazua, because Zarazua would have been lucky loser getting that place there. Cartel, again, interested to see what she does this season. I think last season wasn't able to really live up to the expectations, especially Wimbledon. Remember that run as well. So let's see what happens if she's able to build on that. Berge upset Ostapenko, 4-3. Torsten over Walter, straight sets. Kessler's upset Fernandez, 3-2. Samsonova over Tajin, straight sets. Baptiste is upset Navarro. 7-6, love 6-3. Again, curious to see what happens this season with Navarro. She went from top 10 beginning of last season. Then we saw that regression into the teens outside the top 10. Didn't really make those inroads in the Australian Open because she didn't defend those points in Australia. We're going to see a bit more of a regression when we get to the rankings. So again, really curious. One of those books, no, other side, no, that way. There we go, that side. One of those, the black one there, so my Candace Black book, how it broke down the 2024 season, predictive analytics for the 2025 season, Navarro top 10, etc. All those players that I predicted that would get into the top 10. I think it was like a 95, if not 100% success rate. Very cool. And Navarro is obviously in there, and Tommy Paul as well, for example. Mazzetti. But we're seeing a bit of a slip here, and I'm very curious. Again, another player I'm keeping my eye on. All right, Ayala over Sasnovich in 3, and Alexandrova over Yastremska, straight sets in the round of 16. All right, quarterfinals. Look at this. Berge over Cartel, 11-2. Torsten over Kessler, good, 3-4. Baptiste is upset Samsonova. Baptiste is really finding that ground. I think it was last season. I want to say the US Open, there was a standout for Baptiste. Really caught my eye, and why I'm not that surprised she's starting to track. Definitely still one to keep an eye on. Alexandrova over Yala, 3-3. Good. We know Alexandrova broke into the top 10 late last season. Again, deservingly so. Semi-finals. Look at this. Berge over Torsten, 7-5, 3-6, 7-5. Alexandrova over Baptiste, 3-6, 7-6, 6-3. Very close on both sides. And Berge has taken out, I think, the third or fourth top 20 player in a week to grab her first WTA Tour title, 7-6, 7-5 in that tiebreak, 6-1. That is very impressive. I want to have a look at the ranking shortly to see, where she is at. Obviously, it won't reflect. We won't be looking at the rankings from this week, today, updating, but that could be very interesting to have a little bit of a peekaboo at that. All right. Next, so well done, Berge. That is a player we're going to keep an eye on with big points because this was the 500 event. Very cool. All right, Qatar, the 1,000. Now, this one, big points are on the line this week for a number of players because of the results of last season. Let's see if we can really quickly. I want to go back to last season. All right, so last season in Qatar, this is just the quarterfinals. So quarterfinals, Alexandrova, Pegula, Kostyuk, Anisimova, Jabeur, Ostapenko, Rybakina, Swiatek all made the quarterfinals at this 1,000 event. On paper, Alexandrova, Pegula, Anisimova, Rybakina, Swiatek, we'll say likely to make the quarters. We'll say less likely Kostyuk, Jabeur, Ostapenko. Less likely. Obviously, Jabeur, maternity leave, etc. Maybe Ostapenko will, but we just seen a little bit of a lag there. Kostyuk maybe underperformed at the Australian Open, performed obviously very well in Brisbane. So big points on the line. So keep that in mind that Sabalenka's not there. Sabalenka, I think she fell early last year in the first round, so round of 32 to Sabalenka, which means actually I don't think she's playing. So she doesn't have to defend points. She essentially gets an extra week off, which I think will do her next week. All right. So back to 2026. A couple of results are underway, but let's have a look at this. Potential round of 16 will be Swiatek and Noskova. All right. Haddad Maguire and Tajin. Kazakina got a win over Uchijama. Mertens over Palachenkova. Mertens is tricky as well. That's tough with Mertens there because remember the United Cup. All right, going down, which means 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterfinals. Anisimova's on a collision course. It looks no, no, yes. It looks like Paolini is going to be there. That's interesting. So we'll keep an eye on that. Round of 16 is Swiatek Mertens, which means quarters. The winner of Noskova, Paolini. So Paolini then is there. Gracheva's got a win over Seidman so far because not all matches have played out. And then the winner of, I'll say, Anisimova. And I had it, and then the screen decided to misbehave. So we'll just scroll back up there. Anisimova, Makova, winner there. I think that makes the quarters, semis. So that is tough from that perspective. Pliskova got a win over Sierra, so she's got Anisimova in the second round. Igala Valentova, Makova got a good win over Christian there. Straight sets, 2 and 3. Okay, bottom half, I think of the draw, if I'm reading this correctly. Navarro, Kalinskaya is not seeded. That could be dangerous, granting how she played in Australia. Svitolina's there. Navarro, Svitolina for the round of 16. Alexandrova looks on a collision course with Torsen. However, Raducanu is not seeded. So Torsen, Raducanu potentially in the second round. Could be quite interesting. Alexandrova, Ostapenko potentially second round. And then we've got Samsonova and Gorf for a round of 16 potentially. Samsonova got past Fretch in the first round in 3. Lee got the win over Fernandez, straight sets. Cocchiaretto over Jackie Moe, straight sets there. Gorf has Cocchiaretto, second round. All right, dropping down. Andreeva then. Andreeva and Bocco round of 16. Potentially, Andreeva will play Lynette. Got the straight set, 3-set win over Cartel. Bonariva has upset Stearns in 3 first round. And Mboko got the win over Buskova. That would have been tough because how well Buskova's been playing straight set. So Mboko was on a raver. That would be interesting. But keep in mind how well Mboko has been playing the last few weeks, especially. Parks has upset Schneider first round in 3. So Schneider would have been set to play Rybakina. So Schneider is already out. Interesting. Rybakina has a very nice draw that is opened up. And I think Zheng is back. Queen Wen Zheng is back in action potentially. That'll be interesting, a good telltale, especially if Zheng gets through to play Rybakina in the round of 16. Curious to see how her rehab recovery has been going. I believe it was, I want to say elbow. We'll watch this play out this week because there's a lot to unpack. Obviously, the top half of the draw is a lot more jam-packed, I will say, than the bottom half. Swiatek has a much harder draw, than Rybakina, absolutely, unfortunately. All right, let's have a look at the rankings. Just a quick one. We'll start from around the top 100 and then progress back towards top 10. All right, so, wow, look, Pavlyuchenkova, she dropped 53 points at 100 now. Oh, my goodness. I'm not too sure Pavlyuchenkova's been ranked that low for some time now, but as an example, got bumped outside of the top 100, I think the first time since she entered the top 100. And that's why we didn't see her play in Australia. I think it was the first time, well, since she turned pro, right? So, wow. Number of players being bumped back. Look, Vekic, she's back 23 points to 95 in the world. She hasn't been ranked that low for some time. There's a very big bump. Danilovic is back 19. She was top 50 last season. Another boom, big bump there. Sun's at 86. I don't think she actually played Australia. Parks is up 14 to 85. Looking at the big jumpers here. Sonmes is up 33, so 79. She's at 79. So these rankings do reflect the Australian Open, obviously. Graba's at 17 to 78. Collins is back 10 to 77, did not play though. Selamaktiva, welcome to the top 100, 23 years of age, up to 76 in the world. A lot of movement as anticipated. McNally's up 14 to 71. Putintseva up 24 to 70. Keep in mind, I think she was seeded last year at the Australian Open at 31-32. So she has consistently been around top 40, around top 35. Big dip last year, but let's see if she claws her way back. Dagme is back 7. She was top 10 18 months ago, roughly. Badosa, there we go, back 39 points to 65 in the world. So obviously her seeding in Qatar, for example, the seeding must have taken place prior to those rankings. But that's a big drop. Again, although look, she's been ranked lower than finished the year inside the top 10. We know she's capable of it. So I think Badosa is one of those players where I'm not going to give too much attention to that ranking. When she's healthy, she's playing good. Kazakina back 19 places to 62, another top 10 player. Lies is back 20, 59. That's because she made the round of 16 last year in Australia. Baptiste, good run, up 14 to 56. Maria's back 12 to 54. Stearns is up 18 to 50. Look, Sakari's up 4, so she's back inside the top 50 at 49. Tijin up 12 to 47. Iran goes up 5 to 46. Now, they're two players, for example, that were outside the top 100, I believe, last year. Same with Ayala. She's up 4 to 45. That's a career high for her, I do believe. Yastremska's back 15 to 43. A lot of these are obviously based on the points that they did defend or didn't. Lynette's up 11 to 39. Buskova's up 7 to 37. I'm waiting for Buskova to break into the top 30, potentially the top 20 this season. Boisson did not play Australia, but she's up 2 to 34. That's just a little. Okay, Wang did play in Australia. We know the results round of 16. She's up 13 places to 33 in the world. Vondrasova's up 3 to 31. So good momentum for her. All right, joints up 2 to 29. New career high, 29 in the world, 19 years of age. Well done, Maya. All right. Sophia Cannon's up 2. Callan Skay's up 6. Zhang's actually only back 1. I thought there could have been more of a bump, but she's at 26. Ostapenko steady at 24. Kostyuk's back 3 at 23. All right, Jovic's the biggest mover here. She's up 7 places to 20 in the world. That's the biggest one. And I think absolutely making the quarters, for example, and seeing how well she played, it does track. It tracks. And so I'm very curious to see how Jovic sustains that this season. And Navarro's just back 2 to 17. Torsen's back. Keys obviously bumped outside of the top 10. We did talk about that prior, but we did talk about she still would be ranked inside the top 20. So she's at 15 in the world. Osaka's up 3 to 14. Mboko is a big mover here, up 3 to 13 in the world. That's a big one. This time last year ranked outside the top 100, for example. Noskova then's at 12. Alexandrova's at 11. Very, very close, these players. Svitolina, welcome back to the top 10. It's really great to see. And Benchik, so Svitolina's up 2. Benchik is up 1. Excuse me. Both mothers. I think this is the first time we've seen both mums inside the top 10, which is, again, really cool to see. Paolini's steady, actually. So she's at 8. Andreeva 7. Pegula 6. Gorf's back 2. Then Anasimova's at 4, steady. Rybakina's up 2 to 3. Swiatek steady at 2. Sabalenka's at 1. But look at this. We have almost, not quite, there's almost, well, actually, no, there is 7. There's a 3,000 point difference between Swiatek and Sabalenka. 3,000. Keep in mind, however, not last season, the season before when Swiatek was 1, Sabalenka was 2. Swiatek also had a 3,000 plus point lead. Could have been more. So it can be done throughout the space of the season. Keep that in mind. Rybakina is only 300 points behind Swiatek. This week, if Rybakina performs well, Swiatek does not make the semifinals in Qatar. If she falls early, looks like she will drop back to number 3 in the world if Rybakina maintains pace. We haven't seen Swiatek at number 3 in the world, excuse me, for a few years, right? For a few years. So that's a tough one, really tough, I think, because of her results last season. Rybakina last season, remember, the first half of last season, she did not perform that well. So Rybakina potentially is going to notch up a lot of points in the first half of this season. She doesn't have the points to defend. Sabalenka, yes, so-so. Swiatek, so-so. Rybakina, not so much, which means Rybakina is a real threat to take over number 2 quite solidly. Similar with Anisimova, she started picking up pace right in the last half or last half of the season. Dangerous. Gorf, she's got the points to defend, similar with Swiatek. But I think, maybe because, look, Gorf and Anisimova, they're only separated by, a bit over 200 points. And Pegula, there's 300. So, look, the top 6, well, no, I'll say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So those 5 players there are very close. Rybakina and Swiatek, again, less than 300 points. Then there's 1,000 between Rybakina and Anisimova. But Anisimova and Gorf, that is a little over 200 points. And then 300 separating Pegula and Gorf. Very, very tight. And then when you drop down to 7, there's about a 1,500 point gap, roughly. So it's very tight. So I think we're going to see a lot of reshaping because we've got Qatar, Dubai, March, Indian Wells, Miami, big points on the line. So I think there's a lot potentially that we will see. and it's going to be really interesting, I think. But keep in mind, Swiatek did not have the best clay court season last year, right? Maybe she does this season and she can pick up those points. But same with Rybakina. Sabalenka, I think, does have those points to defend. It's going to be really interesting. This is as close as it's been between that many players in some time. Normally it's just those 2-3 players, but it's really close. And then, look, between 7 and 8, so Andrea Paolini, you got 400 points, but there is more of a gap, almost 900 points between, say, Paolini, Bencic. But there's only 100 points roughly between Svitolina and Bencic. Outside the top 10, so at 11 is about that, 250 points. So it's actually quite close from that perspective. Big separation, I'll say, between the top 6 and the other 6 remaining. But we will keep an eye on that. All right, long episode today. Over to the men's side. Last week, Montpellier was a 250, focusing on the semis, right? So Augur Elisime, Droguert, Manarino, Dam. Let's go back to, so Augur Elisime, that was the number 1 seed. Kaboli, the 2nd seed. Hercax fell first round. Macaque, 3rd seed. There we go. Humbert, Kekmanovic, Grekenspor, Phil's there. Wawrinka got through first round. But yeah, all right. So semifinals, we've only got 1 seed out of all. Felix getting through. And then look, Manarino made the final and Augur Elisime over Manarino 6-3, 7-6. Well done, Felix. Felix, I think, literally picked up 4 or 5 titles, it feels like, maybe more in the last 12 months. He is on a roll. Surprised he didn't play better in Australia, but definitely deservingly so. This will be really interesting. Felix's season. Obviously, he's at his career high, I believe. Well done, Felix. All right, Dallas. Dallas is a 500. It kicks off tomorrow. Fritz, we'll see him back in action. Number 1 seed. TFO, 8 seed. Kaboli. Teen, Silic, Shapovalov, Dimitrov, Davidovich, Fokina, Paul, Shelton. All right, so a lot of the big names back in action in Dallas. I guess we'll see who's carrying that momentum from Australia and or who's shifting gears. And I think that will be good to see who's regaining that form that potentially was a little bit misplaced in Australia or leveling up. So Shelton, maybe he continues that really high run from Auckland, Australia, and through. Fritz, let's see what happens as well, if he's had enough time to rest and or not. All right, Rotterdam also kicks off this week. Tomorrow is a 500. So again, big points on the line. Diminor is the number 1 seed. So a week off, similar like we've had, about a week off beyond top 10 tenors. So let's see if it's enough for them to regain that form. Tsitsipas, Rindex 8 seed, Medvedev 4th seed, Norris 6th seed, Kakanakov 5th seed, Hercax, Bublik 3rd seed. They've got each other first round. And Augur Elisime, he's got Popper in first round. That'll be interesting to see if Felix backs that up from Montpellier to Rotterdam. But again, the swing has officially started. So they've had a week off, some of them. Some, like Felix, did not have a week off. To see. I do hope, obviously, after this, they do get a break before March because we know how heavy March is. All right, so that's Rotterdam to keep an eye on as well. Underway this week. No results yet. And Buenos Aires, it's a 250 that also gets under the way tomorrow. Well, technically today, tomorrow. All right, but okay, Surendolo is the number 1 seed. Berrettini's back in action. Fonseca's the 3rd seed. Echeverry, we've got Carabelli. Sabres Wild, lucky loser got in. Dad Dairy is the 2nd seed. All right, so similar to, I guess, ATP WTA Tour this week. It'll be interesting to see, I think, what happens. More jam-packed. And then I think next week it really picks up as far as the bigger events on the ATP Tour. All right, let's have a look at these rankings. I don't think there are as many big movers on the ATP Tour this week as the WTA Tour, but let's have a look. All right, starting at 100, Carino Busta, he's back 6, so he is at 100. Garen's back 10 to 92. Fernley's back 13 to 90. Remember Fernley's run last season? Last Australian Open. So that's where he would have lost a couple of points. I think he had that big singles win against Kyrgios from memory. That's how's my memory from there? Okay. De Jong, he's back 15 to 88. Shevchenko's up 10, 87. Kokovic, big jump here, or big regression, back 27 points to 83 in the world. Medvedev is up 10 to 80 in the world. Looking for the bigger jumps. All right, Spritzy, he did have a good run, didn't he? Up 14 places to 71 in the world. Kekmanovic is back 9 to 69. Quinn's up 12 to 68. Silik's up 9 to 61. Senegro, and we did anticipate this, back 20 places to 60 in the world. A lot of movement going on. Looking for, I guess, the bigger ones. Look, Dimitrov's up to 43. Diallo. So remember how well he played against Zverev. Zverev did get that win, but he's up 2 to 39. I think he is one to watch this season. Tsitsipas, interestingly enough, is actually up 2 places to 33 in the world. Not too bad, but I think we may see a regression next week's rankings. Macaque's back 4 to 28. Vachereau up 4 to 27. Teen, surprisingly, he's up 5 places to 24. So I think Teen had that regression prior to the seeds at the Australian Open, and he's gained 5. I thought maybe more, but because he did get to the round of 16 last season, quarters this season, that's why not as many points, because he actually did have to defend more. All right. Just small movements now. We're seeing top 20. Cirandolo's back inside the top 20s up 2. Kaboli's up to 20. Look, Rune's back 1. We know he didn't play, so he's at 17. Mensic's at 116. Bit of a shuffling. So we've got 15, Davidovich Fokina, Rublev at 14. Draper, look, he only is back 2 points to 13. I think that's pretty lucky. He didn't play, so he's still maintaining, I'll say, a close hold on the top 10. Rudd's at 12 still, and Medvedev is at 11. So we didn't see either of them, I'll say, perform exceptionally well in Australia for them to be bumped inside the top 10. We did say prior to the Australian Open that if they did, they would join the top 10, but that wasn't to be the case. Bublik's holding on to his top 10 there. Shelton is actually back 2 to 9, but that's because obviously he made the quarters, not semis. Felix, so he's steady at 8 there. Fritz is up 2, interestingly enough, so he's back to 7. Alex is steady at 6. Mazzetti, look, he had a good performance either way. He's steady at 5 there. Zverev and Djokovic changed places, right, because of those results respectively. Back 4, then up 1, Djokovic to 3. And Sin Alcaraz. And the lead, similar to WTA Tour, over 3,000, a little bit more, 3,000 points between Sin and Alcaraz. That is a big one. Keep in mind, though, both of them have a lot of points to defend this season, right, with the finals from the French to Wimbledon, obviously to the US Open, and I guess all the events in between. That'll be interesting this season. So who gives first or who, Djokovic, look, he's going to be steady for some time now. I'm not going to be surprised if he doesn't play anything until the French Open or shortly before. Zverev, Djokovic, they're actually 600 points apart. Mazzetti's only 200 points behind Zverev now. Alex is actually less than 400 away from the top 5. I think he could definitely get there this season. Then there's only about 100 between de Minaur and Fritz, 200 roughly between Fritz or Gorlissime, and 100 roughly between Gorlissime and Shelton, and then about 300 between Shelton and Bublik. So actually very close. Similar to, I'll say, the WTA Tour, but even closer because aside from, I'll say, the top 2, it's actually relatively close, very, very close between most players. Outside the top 10, around 200, less than 200 points behind Medvedev is, and Rudd is less than 300 points behind top 10. So that's actually very good. We're seeing, as far as the points are concerned, a really good correlation with performances points and what's been going on. I would argue that, start of the season, these players do deserve to be ranked inside the top 10. We've had discrepancies in previous seasons, but I'm pretty happy with most of these players, how they've been performing, especially those closing in on the top 10. We're seeing a good correlation. And again, remember last season and the season before, I said that there was a correction that was going to take place. These players would eventually line up, I'll get nicer, so the rankings would correlate. We would see I'll say identified more clearly, whereas we did have some players that weren't performing in line with their ranking, for example. All right, we could go on that more and more, but that's it for today. We will keep tabs on Qatar, Buenos Aires, Rotterdam, Dallas for the next week, and with the rankings updates, etc. So there's still a lot going on. And time permitting, then next week we will do that changeover segment, but we've gone a long one today. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for listening. To grab a copy of any one of my 14 books, you can find them on AM8 International or Amazon. So irrespective where you are based in the world, if any comments or questions, head to AM International or Topic Thread, or leave comments directly on YouTube or Spotify. And to interact with Beyond Top 10 Tennis, catch up on our blogs, or sign up to my newsletter, head to AM International, and remember to check out, say, Pink Octopus Books or Spruik. And look, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, like, share, and do all of the above. Beyond Top 10 Tennis exists for you, so please consider sharing us near and far. And look, if you're serious about heading towards the top 10 or want to know what your game is missing to secure that maiden Grand Slam or more, don't be shy. Come and say hi. All right, on that note, thank you so much for listening. I am so incredibly grateful. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Morgan Berge, and this is Beyond Top 10 Tennis, and I'll see you next time.